Today I want to talk to you about modern cars and experiences as a driver. Because there's a contradiction. One, technologies get better, for example tire performance and also advancements in braking possibilities. They have high pressure, turbos, horsepower is rising in hot hatches and sports cars. So this is also a very good thing, and also materials increase in availability. Aluminium is now often used for almost all parts, but also more exotic materials like titanium, carbon are now being used. This makes cars a lot more expensive. This makes them better, of course, because those premium materials have their benefits, but also drawbacks. For example, if you have a dent or something more serious in an aluminium car, this can have a lot of structural impacts, so additional costs. Even write-offs, for example, for Lotus Elises that were glued instead of bolted. But let's not digress. The thing is, however, safety makes cars in general heavier, and also, but it's a good thing, and also this pollution type of things makes them perform less good with the same horsepower. And also the engine will suffer tremendously more because of the start-stop type of system and cylinder deactivation. Why? Because you need some temperature, and then when they go on and off all the time, you keep in the unsafe zone a lot more. Also those small engines that are needed to decrease carbon dioxide emission will suffer, of course, a lot more than those big engines that we had in the past. So downsizing is a real trend in engines as well. Mooie lucht. Goedemorgen. Oh. Hier aan de kant. Het is een mooie lucht, hè. So this is the thing. What this means is that a lot of car enthusiasts have a harder time getting a car that is really nice to drive. And this is quite a pity, because when I was starting my car experience, I only drove hot hatch type of cars for so long, and I loved it. And now it's quite hard to get one on the second-hand market. Of course you can, but often those have already suffered tremendously by the mileage and all those users before you. So you are buying the troubles of someone else. Not always, but often this is the case. That's quite a pity. So on one hand it's very nice that you have stiffer suspension and stiffer body shell. Goedemorgen. Prachtig hè, die zonsopgang hè?
Heerlijk is het. Het wordt ook weer een heel mooi weertje vandaag.
Ja, lijkt erop. And the additional safety will help you. Also the road conditions have increased tremendously. But now in many countries the maximum speed is decreased. For example, the Netherlands, most of the time 100 kilometers an hour. Yeah. Then a lot of youngsters that would think, what is the benefit of a more powerful car if you get maltreated by buying one new, because they have additional luxury costs that they apply, because CO2 will be higher. You get again hit when you try to insure it. You have additional costs when maintaining it, and also the parts costs are a lot higher. This is, in my opinion, robbing a big amount of driving pleasure from the next generation. And these generations already don't like cars that much, because they see it just as a tool, a phone, some appliance that they often, if they want to take it, they hire it. And even then, a lot of youth, or young ones, see that seagulls flying over the field, don't even have a driving license. They rather go by public transport, or they buy Uber rides or something else to get along. This functions so well that there is not so much need for it. There's another drawback, of course, within modern times, especially in the bigger cities. You are punished severely, not only by CO2 taxes, some of those cars aren't even allowed in, but also CO2 taxes are now on road taxes. So you have road taxes normally only on the weight of the car, so what kind of damage it can do, but now it's also looking at CO2 output. And there's something else. If you want to park somewhere, you're paying through the nose, because it's so expensive, multiple euros an hour. It's just like insane, and really putting people off, because if you take into consideration that cost of a working day just to park it, you could have a free public transport. And then you have the traffic jams, which is such a pity. Modern times, killing driver fun. On the other hand, there are still lovely roads to explore everywhere if you just know how and when. And there are also other options. When I was sitting in the traffic jams all day, every day, and I saw that it doubled my driving time when I went to the southern region of the Netherlands during rush hour every day, I thought, yeah, I will get my driver's license for a motorcycle. And that will give you a lot of freedom again, and also easier to park, and all this other stuff are not that much taxed. And also you get a lot of performance, because those motorcycles can still be light, even lighter than they were in the past, oftentimes. But the drawback is, as I mentioned, cars have become heavier also because of safety. And with a motorcycle, you are the safety net. Your helmet and your protective clothing can help, of course, but the chance of serious injury or even death is so much higher with a motorcycle. The feeling of freedom and performance to exploit, and accessibility of those performance is as well. If you buy a motorcycle for 20,000 euros, you may be hard pressed to find a performance one. You may be hard pressed to find a performance car that can perform as well if you would invest 10 times as much, so 200,000 euros. This gives you some thing to consider. That being said, so of course bigger engines give you better response and better longevity and less costs on the entire life of the car normally, without all those artificial influences like taxes and all those other stuff. And also in the past, car prices were quite a lot lower. It's about 2 times as high for many a car now. There are also a lot of benefits. I will explain why. In the past, you had to have a certain type of car to get the luxuries that you wanted, or the maturity in the drivetrain, and now you can also get them in smaller cars. They drive almost as good as the bigger cars of the past. So you could go, instead of going a size up, you could go a size down. You get less cost. Also, there's a trend in cars. For example, the first Golf, VW Golf, has interior space of a Lupo. That's now been forgotten, but it's or let's say a new car, the VW Up is even bigger and roomier than the first Golf is. And that is 2 steps down, because you have the VW Up. 1 step up is the VW Polo, and then the VW Golf. So you don't lose that much by going step down, because you get the same interior space as the older cars have often. This is not always the case, but just in this example there's something else that is playing parts. Because of additional security, the body panels have increased as well for side impacts. And this decreases, of course, the amount of room in the car with the same width of the car. Therefore also cars become wider and wider. And also in the past they had like steel bumpers. Something different than all those color sprayed bumpers that you see now in the same color as the body panels. And that gives you, if something goes amiss and you want to restore it, it will always be costly. That being said, I would always recommend, look if you can get a hot or warm hatchback. A hatchback offers, in my opinion, the most practical application. Also, if you want to take people or stuff with you, or both. Also, they can be quite compact, so it's easy to park. And if you have a hot or warm hatchback, you still have enough power there, and also often agility and active safety. For example, if you have a shorter brake distance than many another car, whereas it doesn't cost the world. This is just my tip. I always love those class of cars very much, and of course a real sports car is better. A real Gran Turismo or a real Grand Tour is better as well, but they cost so much more, like 3 or 4 times the price, and that just doesn't express itself in that much additional driving thing. So for example, the Grand Tour is the heaviest in this part. It's made to travel in style and also with speed and finesse longer distances, but it won't be as nice as a hot hatch on the back roads. It won't be as easy to park as a hot hatch. Some practical aspects. You won't be able to take so much stuff with you, especially if it's a sedan or coupe Grand Tourer. And if you having the same 0 to 100 kilometers a time in the hot hatch as in the Grand Tour, I can guarantee you it will be more spectacular as an experience in the hot hatch as it will be in the Grand Tour. Grand Tour gives you the feeling of sovereignty, which is nice, but a hot hatch gives you the feeling of acceleration. So it depends on what you're looking for. Of course, the Grand Tour is more mature and will be a good choice after a while as well. Also because the cost of the total cost of ownership are often quite a lot lower than that of a real sports car, and also it's a little bit more practical. But for me, the hot hatch has the best of all worlds. Also, please take into consideration that you don't always need to have full insurance. What I mean, you don't have to always insure for what you can do to your own car, especially if you buy a cheaper hot hatch because you're strapped for cash. Then what is the point to getting full coverage? Of course, when something goes amiss and you're a young driver, this will be a big impact on you, because you have to pay that big sum. Maybe it's your biggest investment, of course, but you should always consider how much it costs and how much you could get back if something goes amiss. Also, please take into consideration, if you're the one responsible, it will also be deducted from your no risk percentage in your insurance. So that's a point to consider as well. And the funny thing is that especially those hot hatches are quite light as compared to many another car. So if you get only the basic coverage, only for what you can do to others, this is often quite manageable. So of course some cars are classified as high risk or for a youthful certain GTI type of car, but sometimes there can be a lot can be done. Also, this down tuning era, it also converted almost all hot hatches to turbo instead of being naturally aspirated cars, has some benefits, because a turbo can easily be fiddled with when you do some chip tuning. So normally chip tuning just gives you some parameters to work with on the engine itself. For example, how much gasoline is pushed into the cylinders and what timing it is. This is on a natural aspirated engine, as well as on a turbo engine. But the benefit of a turbo engine is that you can also fiddle with the pressure of the turbo. So if the pressure of the turbo is increased, you get more air into the cylinders as well, not only more fuel. And this can increase performance tremendously. Whereas a naturally aspirated car, you will be hard pressed to get 10% increase in power. In a turbo car, it starts at 20% increase. So for example, just if you have a 200 horsepower naturally aspirated car, if you already would be getting 10% gains, I think 5 to 8% would be more realistic, then you would go to 220 horsepower. Whereas in a 2-liter turbo press, 200 horsepower turbo car, you will get at least 240 horsepower. And often there are stage 2 or even more. And for example, this engine, that 200 horsepower engine, can be pressed to 290 horsepower at stage 2. If you take the TSI VW engine for an example, which is one of the most tuned engines. And this is ample performance. You get 45% additional power for a price that is still quite attainable. And also the stage 2 involves a cat-back exhaust system, which many enthusiasts would also like, because it gives you a little bit more sound. Sorry. So those are some of my considerations and recommendations especially for the youthful car enthusiast. I think it's not over yet. There's still many to be gained. And another thing is work with the system instead of against it. So for example, if there are some enormous tax deductions, and for example you would rather have an internal combustion engine instead of an electric engine, but all those tax deductions would make it a better deal, please just consider it. Keep an open mind. If you want to do something and you're hurting yourself, this isn't a wise thing to do, in my opinion. Of course it's good to stand for something and not fall for everything. Sure, but the world is changing. And if you don't change with it, sometimes it's changing or breaking. And I would rather have you to change than to break. With this philosophical quote, I would like to end this video. Have a nice day.